been able to play the guitar at the same time as singing. But I'm trying now and I can't really do it. So it's a bit rubbish. Stephen Wilson and Cannot Erase. So yeah, we're doing another Stephen Wilson album. We hope you like us doing the Stephen Wilson albums. We like doing the Stephen Wilson albums, and we'll certainly do any new ones. Some point we might do the old ones, I don't know, maybe. This is called Hand Cannot Erase. It should be stressed that it sounds like it's written like you're on the toilet, so it's Hand Cannot Erase due to full stops. That's been very silly about a very serious album. A very serious album. He's so good at concepts. This is the thing. His idea for what to do for an album is enough to buy the album just on the idea. I bought Roman Refused to Sing just based on reading about the concept of it. You know, it was such a good idea. And I'm not a big Porcupine Tree fan. I'm much more of a Stephen Wilson solo fan. It's very good. It's a concept album. I think before we talk about what it's actually supposed to be about, it's you know, emotionally why he's doing it. It's about the past. It's about regret. It's about a little bit of nostalgia. It's about remembering the good old days through the sheen of time. So it has an overall melancholy, but very uplifting in the end, I think, feel to it. Some of it sounds like a band I really like called Mostly Autumn, which I did not expect. It's not something that the previous album sounded like at all. It is apparently influenced a lot by The Dreaming by Kate Bush, interestingly. I don't hear that much. I mean, I wouldn't have mentioned that if I hadn't read it, that was the case, but I imagine he was listening to that at the time. It is about this woman, Joyce Carol Vincent, who was basically someone who was found dead in their apartment after I think either 2 or 3 years or 2.5 years. And it's an interesting story about, you know, someone who was, it's not someone like an old woman or someone who was lonely or anything like that. This was a sociable person who had a future, and she met famous people and all this kind of thing. And then, but when she died, no one found her for years, which is obviously evokes stuff about the spaces between friends and all that stuff, and the Roger Watersiness, I think, that kind of thing of, you know, there's loads. You're interacting with loads of people, but there's no real interaction. There is still a wall. What does it really mean if you don't remember? People don't remember you. You're gone.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of a comment on city living in there as well, isn't there? Sort of.
Yeah.
Sort of an acknowledgement that actually, if you really want to disappear, it's not go live in the middle of nowhere. It's go live in a city, a busy, bustling city,
yeah,
where you're just another face amongst millions.
Faces passing in the street.
Yeah, it's interesting. What did you think when you first heard it?
Well, the thing is, it's so well structured. It's like a journey. You have to listen to the whole album. And when the first couple of tracks, I was disappointed. I thought, well, he's kind of gone to a much more commercial place. And I thought, oh, you know. And I'd already read, he was saying, well, this is less jazzy than the last album. And it is. And it is a lot more like Porcupine Tree, actually, in that respect. And he's got 2 guitarists. He plays the guitar as well, and he's got 2 guitarists. Why? Let's have lots of guitars. No other instruments. Stop the other instruments. Take them away. We just want guitars. That's something I've never understood. It's a very 90s thing, isn't it? Just to have a wall of... preferably just done by a computer. You don't really need people playing that. But it's like a journey. And that's, you need the start of the album to make the album. And by the end, you feel like you've experienced something profound. Well, you feel like you've experienced something fantastic, because it is fantastic. But it's not about individual tracks, not really.
Yeah.
It's about the whole journey.
I was the same when I heard the first track. I thought, this is not what I was expecting. Obviously, I think he previous to releasing the album, he'd sort of gave a few hints that it's not going to be quite the same as The Raven, which was obviously very deferential to the whole 70s prog rock scene.
Yeah.
And sounded like prog rock supercharged, actually. Sort of the way prog rock could have gone, rather than into sort of neo-prog. This sounded, as you say, a lot more commercial on the first track. But by the last track, when he finishes...
That was beautiful. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's a journey. It has to do that. It works. because it does that. He has returned to the 90s in a way, and there is a meeting of 70s and 90s, I think, in a way. But he's better at doing the 90s than people from the 90s, even though he is kind of from the 90s.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing with Stephen Wilson. It's almost like he looks at sort of like a period of music, not just a program, and thinks, how could it have gone? How could it have actually been better? We've got this now. What don't I like about this? How could it have gone? How could music have sort of developed, and what could it have been?
Yeah.
And he comes up with some really, really, really good music.
This is a timeless piece of music that lasts forever, and you should get. And you might listen to it once and then put it away and think, but you'll listen to it again 3 years time. You'll listen to it again 10 years time, and it'll always be there as a thing.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't think there's many people like Stephen Wilson in the industry. I mean, he is sort of pulled himself together. You know, it's been a real battle for him to get albums made. He has had to largely self-produce in the past, and he's become successful. But what that has given him is a great sense of control over what he wants to produce.
Yeah, he seems to have absolute artistic control, which is that's the secret of what makes it good. Is that he hasn't got suits coming downstairs saying, "Oh, change the bridge. That's not right."
Yeah.
You know, make this song shorter. Get my mate to play that bit. I don't want you playing that bit.
Yeah. So he's on tour at the moment.
He is.
If he's in your town or around your town, go and see him.
Yeah, and you're very lucky, and we're very jealous because he's not playing our town again.
No.
He's already played there twice this tour, actually, but he's coming back to the UK and not playing here.
Band changes. You've already mentioned there's two guitarists. He doesn't have the saxophonist come flute player guy.
No. Yeah.
I know he said he didn't need that kind of sound on this album because it is pretty.
I mean, I can understand. The problem is, it just sounds like King Crimson, and you know, it's the next album after Red, kind of thing. He can't if he just does that, and he's known for remastering King Crimson albums. That's not enough. He's capable of more.
But largely the same.
Like actually, at the start you think it's different. By the end you think, oh well, that's actually, it's just very very good.
Track one. First Regret.
It's a sound effects track. It's a very 90s sounding track, but actually you realise it's like a mixture of there's Mellotron in there, so it's drum machine. It's that 90s stuff with Mellotron as well. I really like that. I like the way it mixes it together, and you don't really spot that the first time you hear it. The first time you hear it, you think, it's from the 90s.
Yeah, that's what I felt. Oh God, my heart broke a little bit.
But I think he softened the blow very cleverly with the publicity, and that helped.
Yeah.
It made me persevere.
Track 2, 3 years older.
Now this, very different, longer track, thrashy rhythm. So not played in a metal muted way or anything like that, but it's obviously something he's played himself and said, well, I want you all to play that. And what's so important about that, in that the bands that do that, they would just do that. He's got a really nice melody going over the top, more like a prog thing, and that's what makes it work. That's the secret, I think. Also, Hammond solo, and he's to a certain extent trying to invoke John Lord, which can't be done in one sense, but it's really good.
Yeah, I really like this track. It's sort of one of the. There are a few lines in the lyrics in this that sort of ring out, and there's sort of the one that comes through on this is "Shame on you for getting older every day," which kind of sums up the Steve Wilson mood perfectly. There is a definite melancholy to it, which we obviously like because a lot of the bands that we end up liking, we always seem to use that word melancholy.
Yeah.
But there is something about it that
about regret. Yeah. There's an element of regret and the melancholy of the past and remembering and that kind of thing.
So yeah, really good. Track 3, Hand Cannot Erase. Well, there's no full stops in here.
There's no full stops, so he's not on the toilet for that bit. This is the most controversial bit, really, we're going to say, in that I actually skipped this track. It's not to say it's bad. It isn't bad. I just can't be arsed with it. It sounds like U2. It sounds a lot like the Manics. Is that a criticism?
Yes.
I think for a lot of people, it is a criticism. The Manics are good. They're good. They're not as good as Stephen Wilson, though, are they? So yeah. So it is. It's my fault I don't listen to that track.
Yeah, I don't think I don't ever skip it, but I'm not really tuned in for it.
I do. I wonder if there's a cynical element to this song, in that he's bringing along a more conservative audience, which I think he has successfully. He got like 5 stars in the Guardian review. I don't think Raven would have got 5 stars. and that track will help with that.
Yeah.
Kind of fashionista types who are a bit indie and much more conservative than we are, and they like much blander music, but they'll be okay with this album, even though there's some really proggy stuff later on, because it starts off like that. And I wonder if there's a cynical element there, and it's worked.
I think he's allowed one track like that.
I think, I suppose the point is he hasn't actually artistically sold out or anything like that. It works in the album and everything. It's not like it's not jarring or anything like that.
Yeah, agreed. Track 4, Perfect Life.
This is where I pick up the story and stuff here because it's spoken word. Really, there's a spoken word thing going on. I think it's about this imaginary character who's based on that real life character. I had a foster sister for only 6 months, and it's about how that for a moment they were the best friends, and then because foster sister she went to another home and she cried, and then over time she couldn't even remember her name, and it's about that spaces between friends once again. That how much are you a social? How much interaction is there? Are we all alone?
I like Perfect Life. There's a real sort of smolchy sort of thing going on when he starts singing. We've got the Perfect Life. Interestingly enough, sort of my girlfriend, who is not into prog at all, when she says the word prog, she smiles. Is this proggy?
Silly.
And she doesn't like melancholic music. She likes upbeat pop music, basically. Interestingly, when we were listening to this and Perfect Life came on, and he started singing the chorus, she says, "Actually, this is quite good." Interesting.
So there is something clever going on.
Yeah, there is something going on.
But again, it's very 90s.
Yeah.
And this evokes outside David Bowie, I think, with the drum machine and the spoken word stuff.
Okay, track 5, Routine.
Now, it's at this point that the album grows up, if you like. It gets more sophisticated as it goes along. That's why it works, and it's here where suddenly there's a lot more depth. And it's about absence. I think it's about children growing up. What will we do with all their clothes now and cleaning up after them? They've left the house and they've flown the nest and all that stuff. Some really nice guitar on this. Best guitar on the album. The guitar on the album is much less proggy, and some of it is very straightforward, but on this one, brilliant.
Very iconic in parts. Sort of, I can hear it in my head now quite distinctly, which I think it's a good vocal melody. When you can keep cleaning and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, a female voice doing one bit of it. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's very good. I would have said, it's 8 minutes 58. It doesn't feel that, but that's obviously because it's in sort of slightly different sections.
Yeah.
And you're right, the guitar's great.
Yeah.
When it kicks in, this is the point where I think you realise actually, this is quite a good album.
Yeah, yeah.
You've gone through Hand Cannot Erase and First Regret, which kind of is what's making you go, oh, hang on. But I mean, you're only into track 6 and you're like, track 6 of 11.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is pretty good actually.
Because next is Home Invasion, next track, and this is some heavy stuff. This is some gent rhythm stuff. I think this is about them finding the body, maybe, in the real story, about that they found this dead body, maybe. I'll talk a bit more about that later on, but organ. I don't think it's Hammond organ. I think it's the other sort of organ.
Roland organ.
Jazz organ.
Jazz organ.
I think.
Piccolo. Alto sax.
There's Chapman stick on this as well. Fender Rhodes.
Oh, right.
Fender Rhodes. Yeah, jazz organ. Let's say that again.
Yeah.
And of course, the next track.
Regret number 9.
Yes, is a keyboard solo, but it is actually a continuation of the previous track, and I like the way he's separated it into a separate thing. It's kind of like a computer gamey thing. It's a mogy thing, but in a good way. I think it's really good.
I think it's brilliant because actually, when I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, is that a guitar with effects or is that actually the organ? And I meant to ask you in the past, is that organ or is that
keyboard?
It is
keyboard. Yeah, it is keyboard.
It's really good. I really like it. It's not often that I get excited about keyboard solos. I get quite excited about that. It's quite difficult to do that sort of. It's almost like you're right, a computer game sort of sound effect, like 8-bit.
Yeah, and it could be very naff. In a very, by now the album is very serious.
Yeah,
it's a very serious album, and it's just played brilliantly.
Yeah.
That's why you need really good players to do this stuff.
Track 8, Transience.
Yeah, and I think at this point, so you've had stuff happen. Maybe it's finding the body, but stuff has happened in track 6 and 7, and now this is the What do we do now? It's a kind of mini aftermath. I think of Hey You when I listen to this. It's not the notes, but it's that kind of vibe of stuff that's happened. Now what do we do?
Yeah. Yeah, because Hey You is, you're right, it's a great track independently, but its positioning on the album is sublime.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's the positioning of this track on the album which really makes this stand out.
Yeah. It's a bit of Genesis-iness with the arpeggios and that kind of stuff.
Track 9, Ancestral.
Now, this is my favourite track on the album. It would have been, if you've heard the album, that would be very predictable. This track we heard him play live before he'd done the album. This was on the Raven tour. I think it was his second time round on the Raven tour. I think he came round twice. Perfect mixture. There's a 90s-ness to it. He's using a lot of drum machiney stuff. There's a in a funny time signature out of sync with the drums at one point at the start. Sublime proggy stuff going on. It's got everything, and at the end you've got the camel type, like Lady Fantasy and all that stuff. That mantra, heavy mantra, dun, 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 and it just keeps going and keeps going. Fantastic.
It's the one you want to watch live. It's the one that makes you think, I want to go and see this. Yeah, he's put his proggy credentials on his sleeve there.
Yeah.
And managed to mix it up with other stuff as well, and still sort of, I think everyone's going, yeah, this is good stuff.
Oh yes, and that would fit on the other album.
Yeah, definitely a peak.
Next song.
Happy Returns.
This has an orchestra on it and also a choir on it, which is interesting on an album where he's using mellotron. At this point, you don't need a mellotron. You need an orchestra because you need it opening out a bit more. You don't need a sort of a weird type sound, and that I think really helps. I think that's a really clever move. I think it's about a letter from the woman to her brother saying, "Hello, I bet you thought I was dead. I'm all right." Blah 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 blah, and you can read it in two ways. You can read it as this is a letter that he's found, but after she's died, possibly, or it's the realization that she isn't dead. I think the latter. I like to think the latter. I think emotionally it works better like that. And you've got it's not like in a story where they spoil it and they're not dead really. I don't think it's like that. I think it just makes it emotionally work better.
Good choir.
Good choir.
Good choir.
Track 11.
Ascendant Here On.
This is a coda. It lets you reflect on what you've just heard. Or I do anyway. I find that I'm thinking about the whole album as it plays, and brilliant. Brilliant album. You can't go wrong with it. You've got to get it.
It's unbelievable. I mean, how can you do it twice in a row?
Yeah.
2 brilliant albums. Do you think, how does this compare to Raven, do you think?
Very difficult. They're not really, you can't really compare them. I think this is a more completely realised package. This is longer. There's more variation to it. Raven is my favourite thing, with my favourite stuff on it. So it's very difficult to make. If I was recommending it to anybody, I'd recommend this first, unless they were specifically looking for
proggy stuff.
That proggy stuff.
Yeah,
Can you recommend some of that? Raven.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concept here is a little bit difficult, a little bit more difficult to draw out. Whereas Raven, it was a sort of concept that gave him a certain amount of freedom. It's like this is the limits of what you can do, i.e., sort of Edgar Allan Poe type story stuff. But within that, there's a lot of freedom. You can make up stuff. Whereas this he's dealing with something quite delicate and obviously real. So I think it's difficult. It's quite hard to find the points of interest and to have the emotional impact.
Yeah.
And I think he's done both quite well.
Very well. Yeah. It's an easy 5 eggs.
Yeah.
There's reasons to think about 6 eggs, but I'm not going to do that. I think 5 eggs.
I don't think you can give it 6 eggs until his catalogue's more complete. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Retrospectively, it'd be easier to egg.
Very impressed.
It's impressive. Catch us next week for another album review.
Give us some likes.
Yay, and some more viewers, please.
And maybe comment.
Yes. See you soon.